So I want to talk about one of these suggestions that I've been hearing about that's going around, because people are trying to figure out what can we do to fight against this tyranny. And I've discussed some of the things that we can do, and I'll discuss a little of that here. But I wanted to address one particular thing that I've heard suggested, and it's reflected in a comment that I got to one of my videos. This person wrote, there is one other avenue which you could label quiet secession, where all the blue states get together and withhold all monies they regularly contribute to the red states who are poor and cannot sustain themselves economically, and by doing so would force the red states and the federal government into following their dictates, which would mean that Trump would have to step down in order for the red states to receive any money, or Trump and his wealthy cohorts would have to pay their bills, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point is to withhold money. The blue states could get together and say, look, we're not going to contribute to our own destruction. We're going to withhold money from the federal government. We're not going to send our tax dollars to the federal government anymore. And by the way, it is the blue states that are essentially financing the red states, because the blue states get less back from the federal government than they contribute in taxes, while the inverse is true with most red states. They take more from the federal government than they pay in. So the blue states are subsidizing these red states. Now, the problem with that is, and I've heard that a bunch, the problem is that's not the way the taxes work in this country. The states don't send money to the government. That's not how it works. If you're employed, your employer withholds that money and sends it to the government, sends it to the IRS, not the state. Now, if your state has an income tax, the employer also sends some withholding to the state. The point is, the state is not involved in collecting tax revenue for the federal government and sending it to the government. That, by the way, would be flagrantly unconstitutional if the federal government attempted to make states do that. The federal government can't make the states its tax collectors. Okay, it's not how it works. If the federal government wants to impose a tax on the people, then the federal government has to collect the tax somehow. And how they've done it is by federal law requiring employers to withhold that money and send it to the IRS. If you are self-employed, you have to send that money yourself. You don't send it to the state and then the state sends it to the federal government. So this it's an idea that I've heard kicked around out there, and it just wouldn't work, because that's not the way the tax system works. There are things that the states can do, however, which I have been advocating since the beginning here, and that is to embrace federalism, to embrace the constitutional fact that the states do not work for the federal government. The federal government cannot tell the states what to do, generally speaking. The way that the federal government gets states to comply with their dictates, and you've been seeing Trump doing that from the moment he stepped into office, especially the second term, is by attaching conditions to the receipt of federal money. You do this, or we're not going to send any money to your state. We're going to cut, grant money for this or that or the other thing. It's what they do to institutions like colleges and universities. Do what we say, or you're not getting any federal money. The way you take back your power is by not taking the money. And I know for a lot of these states that money and the budget is a real issue. It may be easier said than done, but what's more important? These are not easy choices, but we are facing the total destruction of our constitutional republic. And we've got to do what we can to fight against this tyranny. And one way is for the states to say, we're not going along with this crap. We don't want your damn money. You stop taking federal money, you don't have to do what the federal government tells you. That's why the federal government has given so much money to states in these various ways. It's to be able to dictate to them what to do and how to run their states. Take back the power. Stop taking the money. There's other things the states can do to fight back against this tyranny, like enforce their own laws. We've seen countless videos and reports, for example, of Donald Trump's thugs in ICE and Border Patrol and these other federal agencies, essentially committing crimes on Donald Trump's behalf, going into these places, assaulting people, kidnapping people, which is what they're doing in many instances. They are arresting people without any legal authority to arrest them. If you arrest someone, detain them or take them away, and you had no legal authority to do it, you didn't have a warrant, there wasn't a crime committed in your presence, then you have committed a crime. That's kidnapping or some other crime. You know, they think these things are called different things in different states, but they're crimes. If you detain someone, if you arrest someone, if you take someone away, you restrain their freedom of movement in some way, when you had no legal authority to do it, that is a crime. When you use more force than is legally permissible in any given situation, that is a crime. I've seen I don't know how many friggin' videos of ICE thugs assaulting people. These are all crimes. And unless they're committed on federal property, and most of them are not, they're committed in the states, these are state crimes. So another thing that these states can do is to arrest and prosecute these violent thugs who are breaking the law on the orders of Donald Trump. The states need to assert their authority. That is what needs to happen. Stop taking the money. And again, I understand that is easier said than done. But the solutions aren't easy. But there are things, and I don't know if they're solutions, but they're ways of fighting back. And that's what we need to do. In my opinion, we need to use every means at our disposal to fight back against this tyranny in any way that we can. So stop taking the federal money and tell Trump to go pound sand. Arrest these criminal thugs who are committing crimes on the orders of Donald Trump. I think those are two things that we can do, and we can do them now. And in my opinion, we should. Anyway, thanks for watching.